Good morning and welcome to Creative Worship Practices. Just a couple housekeeping pieces as we get started. So if you will add next to your name on your screen, so going up to the top right-hand corner and clicking down, if you will add either ES for English speaking or SS for Spanish speaking, that will help us out as we are interpreting this workshop into Spanish, and we will do some breakout groups later on, and that will help us put you in the groups according to your language. And so if you will add that next to your name, an ES for English speaking and an SS for Spanish speaking, that will help us out as we share this workshop with you. And a second piece, there will be in different sections that we will invite you to share your questions in the chat. And so we're going to ask that you wait to post your questions at that point in time, and that we just use the chat for those questions so that you all can be focused on the workshop and be participating in it along with us and not distracted by likes and other posts in the chat. So if you'll just keep your questions in the chat when we invite you to post those. So if you've got something to write those down so you don't lose track of those in your space today. So thank you for joining us for Creative Worship Practices. I am Sandy Safford, and I am a commissioned lay pastor in the Eastern Plains of Colorado, a small rural congregation. And so from a small church perspective, I share with you ways to add to the worship experience in a small sanctuary.
And I'm Cindy Mormon. I'm a Christian educator for many years in Denver Presbytery.
And welcome. We will share lots of visuals with you today. So we'll begin with why creative worship practices.
So many worship participants are visual learners. And when we are creative with how we present the word, along with themes in worship, we engage many of the senses in the worship experience. The creative side of dressing the Lord's table, creating banners, creating liturgy and pieces for the bulletin, adding objects every Sunday to build upon the Bible story or theme is fun and energy giving. Providing visuals enhances the worship experience and brings God's word alive. What we hope that you leave this workshop with is some simple tips to engage the senses with visuals for worship. What you can do with pieces of cloth, candles, or a few objects to engage the congregation in the worship experience. What easy things you can use to enhance the worship bulletin as well as worship experience. We will share some ideas that stimulate participants to share what they have done as well as dream of doing, in adding creativity to their worship spaces and experience, easy ways to present prayer stations, and easy hands-on practices for various themes and seasons, including blessings and special services that engage worship participants.
So as we begin, what creative arts can be. So it can be as simple as you want it to be. And actually, in most cases, simple is better than in trying to get so creative that you're almost out of control or over the top. And so think simple, think some different colors, think some different textures, dimension. And we're going to talk about a few things that we have, but layers of fabric, use of pieces of wood. I have used hymnals and Bibles to stack up to give some height to the table. Sometimes I have just thrown things onto the table and let them lay where they fell. And so that gets to some people with OCD, but let that go, because sometimes it is just letting it be. So we're going to start with dressing the table. And it may be your Lord's table. It may be a table in addition to your Lord's table. It can be a table that's round. It can be a table of any size. But it is a way to bring visualization to your experience of worship, whether it's in the sanctuary or in an alternative worship space, including outside.
So here I've layered some different colors of fabric for a Pentecost table. I have a couple different colors of each, like red, orange, and yellow here. And they have different textures on them. I hope you can see that on the screen. I've also layered a piece of like glittery fabric here just to give a little bit more dimension. We also have some lights under here that can be turned on. So if it's an evening service, you can, or a darker sanctuary, you can see the lights there. I've added the 3 candles here for the different colors. I've tried to add some height here too by just pulling up the fabric here. And then you can turn the lights on. It also gives a good glow in the early morning or evening time.
We also have our mountain peaks, and I'll talk a little bit later about a Canoeing the Mountain series as a congregation transitioned and did some visioning work. And we'll show you the secrets behind this. So it is just some foam board cut with the mountain peaks. We have some boards, just 2x4s in small pieces that help keep that standing up, but you could use hymnals as well, or books. And then it's taped, and then we just play till you get the peaks the way you want. And then blue adding for flow of water. You can also do the flow of water out of pitchers into bowls. And again, just kind of tossing various colors. And while we know that we have it within the church year, the colors of the seasons, even in the midst of Advent and Lent, if you're using the purple or the royal blue, you can add all kinds of shades to that to again add to your table. And then in addition to the Lord's table, you have banners and paraments, possibly on your pulpit or your lecterns. And so those can be as simple as well. They may just be fabric that you've draped. I have draped ribbons. I have draped fabric on our pulpit. This was just a simple piece of fabric that added the Canoeing the Mountains to, and then just took some puffy paint to add. So sometimes they can be things that you have just laid on or help kind of Velcroed and or temporarily, so you can take them on and off.
Hot glue is a really good time saver too.
It is. Also, if you have someone who can cut and sew or hot glue and give you, for example, a purple banner that's a standard by banner size. And then you can add panels. So for the season of Lent, we did a series on the feasts. And so you just do cutouts on the hard, a little bit thicker felt and Velcro. And so then the color purple. And so you can use that purple banner for Lent or Advent or in between. And each Sunday you can add to your banner for 6 panels. And for Advent, you can add Epiphany, and then you're set. Also, there's the series that you might be using in a children's message or in like the season of Lent, where you're lighting a candle or extinguishing candles, where you might add symbols and panels to your banner as well. So there's lots of ways to use those as part of your liturgy. There is also felt and Velcro are your friends. So we have just cut a pathway out of felt that was added to the purple banner, and then just added different easy cut figures from coloring book shapes. And so in the course of Advent, we were adding Mary and Joseph as they wandered. I'll lay that on the table. As they wandered, and then when the shepherds, then you add your sheep. And again, you can invite folks in your congregation to be adding those pieces through the course of the season. In addition, you can create panels that just hang separate. So this is another one with the cutouts. So in Advent on a Shepherd Sunday, and just some fine pointed scissors or an X-Acto knife, and then your background. So you can have fun with that yourself, or you can invite some folks in your congregation who might enjoy creating those for you and putting those together. Then there's the stoles. So you may be great to use a sewing machine or a hot glue gun, but if not, there's someone in your congregation who I'm sure would be more than willing to do some stoles. This was a Lenten stole that throughout the season of Lent, the first time I used it was we added the symbols as we journeyed through Lent. And then you have the stole for future seasons. And then some of the themes that we'll share with you today: canoeing the mountains. I'm just finding some fabric to do a mountain scene. And then trees of the wilderness for a series in Lent. So if you have someone that will help you with that, or you're into that, you can also use the stoles to help add to the worship experience. So working with fabric can be as easy or a little bit trickier, up to your discretion and how you want to do that.
There are many places you can get fabric too. I get a lot of mine at Hobby Lobby, or Joann's sometimes has it. If you have one of those stores in your area, you can also order it online.
Right. There's I believe it's a sunflower.com, and they have a lot of variety, and you can just search whatever you're looking for. I know they have fabric that has looks like the ash crosses that are made with a finger for an Ash Wednesday that you could drape a table with, or create your own as well.
The candles here are just electric candles. Whether you use electric or battery powered candles or regular candles, it's up to you. I just find battery powered a little bit easier to work with, and you don't have that fear of fire in catching onto something too. We have these, you get candles in many different heights, many different sizes. We have a candle here that's in this vase that's filled with water, and it's just floating in there, and you can light that. Anything else about candles?
I've used the candles floating in the water for Pentecost and had many different containers, so that the light looks as if it's floating, so you can just put your water at different levels. And then other accessories, ribbon. I have used ribbon for water, and again, sometimes I just throw them on the table, wrap them around bases of candles, run them up into a Bible. So you can find those, again, similar stores that Cindy's talking about. just to add for a harvest table, just to add some color as well as texture, and different widths of different pieces as well.
Streamers are really fun to use too, like several different colors of ribbon, and you just you can tape the end together and hide it in some way, like under a piece of cloth or something, and just have them floating off of your table. They're it really does an incredible job with the flow. If you have a breeze or something in your sanctuary, it really looks fun.
Right. And Pentecost, I have added a fan up where it was kind of hidden, but that would blow things around. And the same can happen outside, and you just let the Spirit move whatever you might have in your table or in your space. And that's one thing, if you're worshiping outside or in a different space, adding different pieces can make it create that sacred space and give you that opportunity to create a worshipful place. But giving folks something that they can see and even try to interpret themselves in the midst of worship. So lots of accessories that you can use, and sometimes they're simple things that you find at home. Sometimes they're as simple as walking outside and picking up a rock and adding that to your scene. And so in addition to dressing the table, adding pyramids, adding banners, you also can weave the creative arts into your bulletin, into your liturgy. There's on our resource sheet that you can access if you haven't already, along with some handouts that have some specific themes and some more information on that. But you can weave in choices of hymns. There's several resources listed on our sheet that are new words to hymns that you're familiar with. And so you can pick those by theme and print those words in a bulletin. And that gets you a chance to, really have an experience of weaving the words of hymns as well as liturgies into that space.
We want to talk about lights now. We've already talked about candles and how the lights, light is important to our worship area, but there are many different lights out there. There's so many different kinds. This is just a string of like Christmas lights, clear ones, and I've just wrapped strips of cloth around the in between each light. I use this one for a spirituality center. You can do any color that you want to go with the theme, and just weave it in between the cloths, or you don't have to have the cloth on the string. Just weaving it into the cloth on your table is a great way. They're these they're the little slim lights, those little mini lights that you have, and they're battery powered. These are great. I have some underneath this cloth here. And you can't really see them once the cloth is laid on top of them, but you can see the light shining through the cloth. Do you want to talk about the Christmas
Yeah,
table?
we'll show that in just a second. Yeah, we'll show you some examples of using lights.
Right, yeah. But I think I got these at the dollar store or Dollar Tree, whatever you have around you. You can get them at Walmart, you can get them anywhere. So there are many different sizes, many different shapes, colors. Yeah, just use light on your tables. It's a great way to enhance it.
Right. The use of symbols, and we have some simple ones on our table. So pictures of all kinds, and the trick, which you have seen in our worship services already at the annual event, is you can use clear glass that will show you what's the water in it. You can use it for communion. So a variety of different pitchers and different sizes. And also what you've seen demonstrated so well is pouring. And so if you're pouring into something, start close, but then as you lift it and pour, you're letting folks see and hear the water or the fruit of the vine. And so that adds to the senses as well. You can use real fruits like grapes or bread. We'll talk about World Communion, and I've had pretty much a year's worth of communion bread on the table. So various breads from different countries on a World Communion Sunday. And then we throw it in the freezer for the loaf that's broken, not eaten, but broken. Bowls, baskets. When you're using bowls and baskets, sometimes it's fun to just put something behind them so they're tipped or something's flowing out of them. Nets, shells.
Yeah, the shells, the big shells are good to dip into the baptismal font and just let the water drip from it. It's a good visual. I have a net that you can just throw on the table if that is part of your theme. Great visuals.
Mm-hmm. And then you also can use your symbols as part of the worship experience to include lay leaders in your congregation. It may be bringing them in into a sanctuary, placing them on the table. In seasons, I have had folks come forward to read the liturgy for a Lenten season or Advent and lighting the Advent candles. And as they read, they're adding a symbol to the table. So during the season of Lent, I have had folks pour sand on the table as we talk about being in the wilderness and Jesus in the desert. And then build upon those symbols throughout the season. And so that each Sunday, folks are even in anticipation of what comes next.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've used simple things, just a heart. Valentine's Day is coming up, and so I just grabbed this heart, and it was one of the symbols that we put on a table. We've used somebody's sandals from home as a visual.
Compasses.
Yep.
You can take a simple piece of canvas. I've used canvas colored fabric. I've also used a black canvas, and I've cut a pathway. I've hot glued little pebbles, stones to it so that I had a pathway on the table with the small stones. And then again, you can move figures along that. You can add your symbols at different places along the path as a journey representation.
You can buy packages of small seashells and have them in a line. If you're doing a pathway, you can, with the sand, you can have some of the seashells in the sand, on the sand, but they're just different kinds. And I think I got this from Guildcraft Arts.
So lots of different ways to add visuals to your worship space, dressing the table, banners, the paraments. Questions on that first piece before we move on to the seasons and show you some examples. So if you have a question, if you want to put that in the chat, and we'll try to share those. So as I mentioned before, when you're in the midst of the seasons, you can use obviously purple or the royal blue that you can use at least twice a year. The use of green through ordinary time, use lots of variations of green. And switch them out or add ribbons in the course of, it is a rare thing in the congregation in Byers, Colorado for our table to not have something on it. It's not always draped in fabrics, but it usually has some symbol, and so that folks start to wonder what's going to be next for those seasons. So we want to share with you some PowerPoint slides of some examples as we talk about the season. So obviously, as we talk about Advent, we are talking purple. And so we've already had some purple on here, but again, adding textures, draping things to give height. And again, just the variations, and sometimes just letting things flow. And then, here's a good example of how to use lights. So these are just the icicle lights that are underneath actually a piece of white fabric. So they shine through. We did a series on From Generation to Generation from a Sanctified Art. And so because it was all about sharing the stories of the Bible, our Bible, I think you can notice this in the slide, the Bible was elevated and actually open, and it was above the stable for the creche. And then we actually put the figures on top of the open Bible. So on the first Sunday of Advent, Mary and the angel were actually sitting on top of the Bible. And then as the Sundays progressed, they would move around on the table. And I like the Epiphany story to wait till Epiphany. So my wise men are usually moving about in the sanctuary on their way, but they don't arrive till later. And our next slide, please. Again, Christmas Eve, the use of lights, use of candles. And then our next slide shows a longest night service. So in the evening, and actually the photograph is taken through a teardrop ornament that we shared with the folks that participated as we talked about loss in the midst of the season that's supposedly filled with joy. And part of the lighting of the candles, which most of these are oil candles or real candles, was part of the liturgy. So as we shared various readings, some scripture, some not, about light in the darkness, we lit candles as we shared. So the light grew in the sanctuary. And with it being in the evening service, it was pretty powerful to have all those lights. The season of Lent also has the lighting of candles, but you also can extinguish candles and dim the light as you journey through. And then come Easter, bringing all those lights, relighting them in the celebration of the resurrection. In the packet that you can access and the handouts online are some examples of the themes that have been used. One was come to the table, and you'll see that in the next slides. So come to the table was stories of Jesus meeting people at the table and sharing those stories. And so we had the table of forgiveness. And so I had a second table on the floor. You'll see some of those. And that table setting would change. So if we were in the house of Mary and Martha, it was a simple kitchen table. If we were in the home of Simon, the Pharisee, it was a fancier table. And then the fanciest table with the gold colors was the banquet table. We, in the midst of the series, celebrated an anniversary of the church. So we had a party table. And so you'll see that even with the birthday cake as well. And then the Come to the Mountain series, there's the party table and the simple kitchen table. And then the next slide, you will see the Come to the Mountain as we built that series and used the book, Canoeing the Mountains, and built that. I've also done a series, Come to the Mountain for Lent, and the mountain stories, and use the mountains for that as well. And then Pentecost.
Right. Pentecost is a great way to use floating candles. You can get heart candles and have them in big vases or long vases, short vases, however you want to do it. It's a great way to use light. One year we had people write prayers on a piece of paper and then fold it into a peace crane, and then in different colors, so orange, yellow, red, in the various colors, and then we strung them all up, and we put 2 hanging down from the top of from the ceiling of the sanctuary down, and it was just done by, we had easy ones that pulled down, hooks that pulled down so you could lift them up for the tall ceiling. And it was beautiful. The wind was blowing through it, and they were all, it was great. The prayers were flowing through the air on that Pentecost Sunday.
And we know that some of you are just joining us because of our tech issues. So we're glad that we've got you. Just talking through some of the ways that throughout the seasons, we can add special themes, as well as use fabric, ribbons, symbols to build upon, particularly through seasons, and the use of all the different textures. And we are also recording this, so we will give you a chance to see this in its entirety. And so that'll be posted, so watch for that. So we're sorry we had some tech issues, but we're glad that some of you have been with us since the beginning, and others are now joining us. So as you think about creative worship experiences, what is going to be appealing to the eye, which is color, texture, height, depth. And then the themes help us put a framework to that. So we've talked about Advent, Lent, Pentecost, and then World Communion. So the use of a globe and added to the table, the breads, as I mentioned, that you can have a variety of breads at the table. And I have a scarf that's my family clan from Scotland, and I have draped that as a parament on the pulpit, along with ribbons. I have also added those to the table. Throwing various fabrics from around the world. So this is just a fabric map. I've actually put just a map of the world, and also added that to the table. So you can do that, and not just on World Communion Sunday, and then just kind of collecting or inviting members of your congregation who might have visited other countries, be from other countries, to bring in a piece of fabric that might represent their traditions or their ancestors, and add those to the table. You can also invite folks to bake the breads of their traditions and add those to the table as well.
They can bring in baskets. I have a wooden bowl here. And like, we can put stuff underneath it to give it that height, so people can see the bread inside of the bowls and the baskets.
Yeah, and then things can be flowing in and out, or tossed in or added.
You can have fabric covering the bowls or the baskets and lay the bread on top.
So again, simple. It's not worrying about that all the folds are in the right places or edges are covered. Sometimes it's just tossing it on the table, and changing it from week to week to see who's paying attention, to see who might be noticing what new addition you have added to the table. So you can do lots of themes. Just a couple last slides to show you. One of a harvest series, but also can be Thanksgiving. I've taken a cornucopia and actually had it flow out from the open Bible on the table with fake fruits or grains, especially being a rural area. The reminder of the harvest theme and having those just flow out. I also have had, when I'm setting something up like that, like a cornucopia, where something fell on the floor and it's kind of caught my attention to say, oh, wait a minute, that's okay. Because that's that sign of abundance, that sign of overflowing bounty. So sometimes let those moments be spirit-led as well. And then Canoeing the Mountain series, as we started with our mountains, just built on the foam board that's taped to some pieces of wood. I've also used the footprints. So just simple footprints cut out of paper that can become a prayer practice. We'll talk a little bit more about those. So folks can write on them and move forward with that. And sharing maybe a vision or what they need to let go, and then inviting them to bring those forward, whether they're on your table or whether they are on the floor in front of your table. So a variety of ways to use visual arts that we have shown you. So instead of breakout groups, which we shared earlier, we're going to give you a couple minutes to look around the space that you are in. And I want you to collect one or two things that are around you. They can be as simple as if you're sitting in your kitchen, you just grab a bowl or a basket. Maybe there's a scarf somewhere near, but give you a couple minutes to just grab two objects in your space that catch your attention. And then we're going to invite you to share those in a minute. So a couple objects that are in your vision. So if you can turn your camera on to share those couple objects, that would be great. If you can't, we'll give you a chance to share that in the chat, or we'll try verbally in our small group. And so just invite you to show us those objects and invite you to share, if you will, and we'll do that kind of together, how we might use those in a worship experience. Someone want to start us off by showing us on the screen your and or putting in the chat what you picked? Questions too. Yeah. You can unmute and just speak.
Good.
Oh, we got some. There we go. Share with us the objects that you picked.
I have a skein of blue yarn
Nice.
that I have sitting around. It's like tonal blues. And I have this scarf that has turtles on it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, beautiful. So where might you use those in a worship experience?
On or around the table for sure, or hanging off the pulpit.
Absolutely. Yeah, on a baptism Sunday for the symbols of water, for us, any scripture story about water, which we've got lots, right? On a baptism of the Lord Sunday. Other ideas? Other objects. Who else wants to share their objects? Just unmute and share that. Emily, have we got any in the chat to share?
Hi.
Oh. Hi, Kathy.
Hello. I was supposed to be in Birmingham, but I'm on the other end of COVID, so I am
Oh.
home. But
Well, we're glad you joined us.
yeah. So I just looked around here behind me. I've got lots of great things on the shelf here, but I've got this loving cup
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
thing. And it already has like a little verse inside of it. I don't remember when I got it, but I mean, it could be used in a wedding service, or it could be
Mhm.
used as part of a baptism service where maybe an older sibling would use it to pour some water
Oh,
into the
definitely.
font.
I love that
Yeah,
piece.
definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so I had that, and then I've had this sign for a long time, which I don't know, it could be an interesting thing in like a worship center or something to see who can see what it says and who cannot see what it says. But anyway,
Yeah,
so
even a
this,
Transfiguration Sunday, right?
yeah.
Well, and I think you bring up a piece too that we haven't talked about is we've talked about bringing things and adding them to the table. But what if in the message or in the part of a liturgy, you are lifting up something like that and saying, look at this. What does this say to you, or what do you see? In a children's moment or a time for the child and all of us, letting folks come forward and touch what's on the table. Or move around what's on the table. Again, it's the visual, but it's also the sensory piece. If we're an invitation to the table, come and take a piece of bread that's on the table instead of us taking the bread to other folks.
Yeah, we had a Pentecost Sunday where we got a whole bunch of the tulle fabric. It's like this, and it was red and orange and yellow, and we just had it on the floor. And when the children came up for the children's message, they were able to wrap themselves in all of that tulle, and it was really fun and interesting to see how they reacted to that. It's a good sensory
Yeah,
thing to do.
yeah, indeed. Other objects to share, either in the chat or just unmute yourself and share? So they don't necessarily have to be, crosses or things that we might find in our office or walking through the church. They can just be objects from a kitchen. I've used just a simple wine glass, and actually have you that's clear. And I've done that for a Lenten series on Jesus turning water into wine, and had both a clear pitcher of water and then a red tablet that was hidden in the cup that I tossed in. So that when I poured the water, and again, as we talked about, starting out low and building up so they see the water, so that the water in the cup turned red in the pouring. So those symbols that add to the stories.
When Sandy talked about setting the table, you can just come in and put your apron on and have it on as you're setting the table. Have aprons for the children, for their children's message, and then have a kitchen in your playground that you can have for them as visuals and objects that they can hold as they're listening to the message on Sunday morning.
Yeah, things that you might use in that message that you give to the children to take back with them, whether they're on sitting and staying in worship. If you're sharing a book, if they can take the book with them. So ways to build on the table, but also not be afraid to take off the table. Are there objects to share or objects in the chat? And then I think we missed a couple questions, so. No? Okay. So at this point, if you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. And as we catch those, we will do that. But thank you for sharing some objects. It's that easy. to pick something up and envision what it looks like. But don't be afraid to just tip things, spill things out. Let that order piece be elsewhere in your experiences, but doesn't have to be in your worship experience. We want to talk about some other themes, like Children's Sabbath.
Yeah, we have done Children's Sabbath in the church that I've served in, and we have had the children at one point in time do their handprints. Everybody's seen them on the table. They put their handprints on it, or a thumbprint, or some sort of print on the tablecloth, and then just have it there. We've also just added children's books to the table and just let them sit there and have the children come up if they wanted to and pick a book, special days. Yeah, it was great having the kids just come together at a Sunday school hour and put their handprints on it, write their name on it, so everybody knew whose handprint it was. And then you can also always use that as a banner just by sewing or gluing an edge for the rod to go through, and then you can hang it up for many years to come. And those kids will see their handprints when they're a senior in high school and know that they are loved by that church.
Right. And that moves us into blessings, which is a great way to practice milestone ministries, if you're familiar with that, where we honor the various milestones as a congregation, both in worship and within families. And so there's an opportunity to use those blessings as part of the worship experience. And prayer shawls is one way to do that.
Yeah, I brought my prayer shawl, and in the church that I served in, we had a group of women who started a prayer shawl group, and they made as many prayer shawls as they could, and every year we would bless those prayer shawls before they were taken out into the community and given to people who were in need of those prayer shawls. Here's mine. It's just it's knitted, and then there's a simple prayer on it. There's blessings of the animals. I don't know how many churches do this, but we did in our church. And this is the book that I read to them, to the children on that day, that morning, for the children's message. It's a prayer for the animals, and it has beautiful pictures in it. And the kids could talk about their pets at home. They brought their pet, or they have it at home. You can put you can have people hold up, as they're being blessed, a picture on their phone, or they can bring a picture of their pet and lay it on the table. And then we gave little blessing tags for their callers to take home, so that they knew that they were blessed all year long. The Bibles, the third grade Bibles, the confirmation Bibles can be all put out on the table and blessed, as the children and the youth are blessed every year for those grade levels. And Youth Sunday, I have a quilt that have the youth on it, their pictures, and the scripture that they most identified with. And they gave it to me as I left that congregation. But have a quilt out for a Youth Sunday, and that has the youth. And then you can also use that as a banner in years to come, or hang it in the youth room when you're finished. And there are so many ways to do blessings for confirmation. We did mentors with our confirmands, and each year as they the 6 months that we had confirmation, they grew to know each other, and they made a stole for each other. So they put whatever they thought identified with that person on the stole. It didn't have to be a religious symbol. Some were basketballs or footballs or just whatever it was. If they like jump rope, they could put a jump rope on there. It was really touching to see those confirmands put that stole on their mentors, and the same with the mentors putting that on their confirmands.
Yeah, banner panels. We showed you a couple just made of felt that you can add. You can build banners that have panels that either a children's ministry or a confirmation class or a youth group have done the individual panels, and then have someone sew those together. I know a congregation that each confirmation class created panels. So however many were in confirmation class, that's how many panels were on the banner. And then those banners from year to year were hung every confirmation Sunday. So it just built. And so you had young adults going to find their banner from the year of their confirmation class. So lots of ways to use blessings and to incorporate those in your experience. There's also prayer practices, and particularly if you're in a smaller congregation or in a smaller meeting group for a worship experience, is you can incorporate those prayer practices within your worship experience. So it might be the rice paper that you are writing on, or a star shape for Epiphany, or it might be a heart or a footprint for a journey theme. And the rice paper, writing it with a washable marker, the darker the color, and then letting it go and putting it into a bowl or your font. And if it's clear, then folks can see how the writings are washed away and the symbolism of being washed clean. And you can see that visually in the water in a clear bowl. I've done series, particularly in Lent, one on living waters, and again, the stories of waters throughout Lent, and then given objects, just various pieces of glass, a heart-shaped piece of glass, a piece of perhaps a pathway, a glass-shaped butterfly, just various colors, and again, textures or shapes of glass. And they were given a new one every Sunday, or they're just given a little container bag that has all of them. And then they're encouraged to add those to a container of water at home as they continue to think about the meaning of that throughout the week. Using glass beads, and again, just pouring them on your table, just as you might build a prayer space or a prayer station. You can build those on your table, something to hold while you tell the story of maybe Mary, who we always, for some reason, put in blue, but a symbol. Hold a piece of fabric, hold a symbol that they then take home with them. I have done an Ash Wednesday service when, as you came in, you took a stone out of the font as you entered. And so you held that stone, and we talked about the journey through Lent and how we're taking rough edges off. And letting them take that stone home. I've also had them trade that as they left. So leave their burdens on the stone in prayer, and then leave that behind and take a shell or another symbol out of the bowl that they take with them into the season of Lent. So you can use a variety of objects to be prayer practices. Whether you're handing those out as they come into worship in a smaller congregation, or handing them out in that moment. It invites them into the experience instead of us just always presenting it to them.
Handing them out during children's message too
Right.
is a great way.
Exactly.
We are all children of God, so anybody can come up for the children's message.
Yes. Also, I've done things like, I know you can get different seed paper. I've gotten butterfly shapes just simply off of Amazon that I have handed out on an Ash Wednesday or a first Sunday of Lent. Invited people to go home, soak it. That's a key. Soak your seed paper for a bit in water and then to plant it. And so as they're doing that at home, or a bulb, like a daffodil bulb or a tulip bulb, in the beginning of the season of Lent, but then having that same symbol on the table. So that they watch it grow on the table as they're also remembering that at home, they are watching it grow there. And sometimes they'll bring it to share with you come Easter as well. So different ways to have things grow and change over the course of a season, or throughout a theme that you're using in worship.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Last year for Lent, we had a series, and it was about growth and vines. And so we used a lot of fabric, a lot of tool materials such as this, different colors. And the vines started out in the brown colors, and they were flowing out and through, and we had rocks and blue going down in for the little river, or the river. And as it grew and came more alive, it started getting lighter and lighter, and so it went into the greens, and then we started having the different colors, the reds, the yellows for the flowers and the trees, and all of those things that start coming alive in the spring. And we added flowers in vases and pots and living plants to that area. It also went into our prayer area. We had a separate room off the sanctuary that we had every day. The first day we had worms in the ground as they were digging and finding their way through the dirt, and that was a really good visual for the children. And so it just our sanctuary became alive, but also our prayer centers became alive. And we started adding animals to that and pictures of animals, and it just became really alive. And then on Easter, it was, all of the flowers and plants that we do for Easter services. So it was really interesting to see how all that came about.
Yeah, and as you start to play with things, you'll find that you get braver and braver. We did a series on the feasts of the Bible, and we did it during Lent. You wouldn't have to. And so we focused on a different Jewish festival or feast each Sunday in Lent. And so we mentioned this early on, but some of you weren't with us. If you could have someone who will just make for you a purple or royal blue, whichever color you use for the seasons of Advent and or Lent. And you can keep reusing it by adding panels. So simply putting, especially if it's felt, you can just put Velcro in the corners and add. And so cut out panels. This is just a piece of felt that comes in the size panel.
It's the stiffer felt.
Yeah,
right?
the stiffer. It's probably a 16 by 12 maybe, but you can just buy that at a craft store. And then an X-Acto knife or really sharp scissors. You can cut out the symbols. The trick is to draw your symbols on the back and then cut them out. So we added a feast panel just with Velcro in the corners every Sunday. But we also got brave, I think, in taking PVC pipe and building a booth for the Feast of Tabernacles around, so just a frame around the table and above it, and then taking, like Cindy said, the vines, and decorating that and adding to that, having a shofar, someone that will play that if you can, but again, those symbols. And so we transformed our table for each feast, and the symbols of those Jewish feasts. Okay, yeah, we've got some questions, so let's take a minute for those. So one is, do you have pics of this Lenten series on the vines? Because they're trying to visualize what that looked like. I don't in the slides, but we'll have your email so we can possibly get that to you. But there is a description in the handouts that are posted. So on the APCE website, you can find our workshop number and creative worship practices, and there are handouts that talk about the different themes, and the feasts are on there. So it'll give you kind of a description to do that. But you can contact us with our information, which is also on those handouts. And I'd be happy to send you kind of a vision of what those look like. Great question.
Our workshop number is 503 if you needed that.
And the resource sheet will also give you the books that we use for the feasts and other resources.
We do have one participant that said that their prayer shawl group at their church gives Afghans to their graduating seniors. That is great. That is awesome that they do that. Because we are sending them out into the world, right?
Yeah,
They do need our prayers.
absolutely.
Always.
Other questions, other things that you all have done? And you can share those in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself and share that in voice. Or things that you've seen done. You can always start small, so you can add one color to the table. You can play around with it and see how it feels. And if you're not comfortable with it, I'll bet there's somebody in your congregation who would help you or create a team that just sits around a table and dreams, and maybe start with a season of the church year and start there and say, what could we do? But remember, just toss things, give them height and depth. Don't be afraid to tip things to show that they're overflowing. Different textures. Don't be afraid to make a mess.
Yeah, don't be afraid to look everywhere for objects. Things like this little shell bowl I found at a Goodwill. You find so many things there that you can use: baskets, bowls, a lot of things that can help you with height. You can find candle holders there. Just go and look, and it's amazing what you can find.
Heather, what have you got to share with us?
I thought it's done somewhere else at a.
Oh, you kept cutting out you're cutting in and out, Heather.
All right, is this any better?
Yes, that's much
Okay.
better.
It's the idea that I saw done at a conference I was at, and then I tried it at my church. During the children's message, we gave each of the kids a little lump of modeling clay, just like the cheap stuff you get at Target or Walmart or wherever. And we talked about that day, we were talking about God's love. And so we asked them to think about what shape or what symbol they would consider God's love to be if they had to make a shape to represent it. And then they took that back to their seat with them. And during the sermon and the, you know, quote unquote, boring parts for kids of the service, they worked with their hands making these shapes. And we told them whenever they were finished, then to take their shape up to the table and lay it on the table for the rest of the service. And so they were free to just wander up and down as they wanted to do that. And then at the end, the pastor invited everyone to come forward and see these shapes and the symbols of God's love.
I love that.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the freedom of that, right? The invitation to just come and add it to the table as you feel comfortable. And so, yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
It's a great way to bring kids in when they're bringing something to the table. Have them carry the bread on World Communion Sunday, or even regular Communion Sunday. Have them bring the elements in, have them bring the Bible in, have them light the candles, have them bring in objects if you're doing a series and lay them on the table or in front of the table, wherever you want. They don't have to just bring in the palm branches on Palm Sunday. That's a great way to get them coming back to church and staying there and being involved in church. Youth are a great way too. They love to read scripture, and but bringing all of these elements in, have them come and dress the table. Have a group of kids come in and put the cloth on the table, and it is what it is, and it's beautiful that way.
Yeah, you can also, you know, have folks bring things. We probably all of us have heard of folks that bring in their favorite crush or their favorite nativity scene, and build those on the table or around the sanctuary. Depending on a series, if you're doing a journey series, what's your favorite thing to take on a journey? And invite the congregation to add those, or the kids or the youth, to add those to your worship space, whether it's on the table or flowing off of. If it's a feast series or a banquet table or just one Sunday, what's it when you do a meal like a Thanksgiving meal, what's your favorite thing that's always on the Thanksgiving table? So things like that. So invite folks to bring things from home and to share them, or to leave them on the table and then give the opportunity to folks to tell the story behind those objects as well.
I did a spirituality center 1 year here at APCE, and I had them make prayer flags, and I took them home, and I was like, I don't know what to do with these prayer flags. So I sewed them to a different material, to a background, my background here, and then I sewed them on top, and I have it and I use it as a runner on the table, and it has all of these prayers. So all of these prayers have stayed with me all of these years.
Other questions, other things to share that you've done that have inspired you, even that are on your list to try, or things that you've seen done as we kind of wrap things up today? You can put them in the chat, or you can just unmute and share those. Well, we thank you for joining us for this workshop. Hopefully, you've been jotting down some ideas like, oh, I totally should try that. Know that you can go to the APCE website, and under 503 creative worship practices. We have handouts that have some of the themes outlined and some of the prayer practices that went with those. Has our contact information for both Cindy and myself. So you can reach out to us and ask questions or share with us. Also has a resource sheet with liturgy resources, really anything that comes out of the Iona community has amazing things, but we have several resources for hymns. Carolyn Winfrey Gillette, and I might have mixed up the two last names. They might be reversed, has several books that have hymns that are new words to familiar tunes. And that seems pretty easy for even congregations that don't like a lot of change. If the tune's familiar, then they can sing to some new words that fit your theme. And feel free to use some of the music pieces that we've seen, again, more of the repetitive or almost chants or the reflection and repeat that we've even experienced here at APCE. So have fun with it. Step out and just experiment a little bit, add some color, get a group behind you to do it, because I think there's energy in that. And have just fun adding sensory pieces, color, and texture to your worship space. Any last questions before we let you all go? And again, thanks for your patience with our technical pieces. And if you didn't get to see the whole thing, it was recorded, so you can at your leisure access it and take it in, and then shoot us your questions in our email, which is posted on the resource sheets as well. So thank you and have fun playing with worship.